Thank you all for joining us today for our webinar entitled Best Practices for Part 11 Compliance with DocuSign. My name is Kim Hutchings and I'm VP of Alliances with USDM, and we're very excited to be updating our customers today on our recent work with DocuSign. As many of you may know and you'll learn more about today, DocuSign now has a Part 11 compliance solution that is enabling life science organizations to use it to manage and approve regulated business processes. It's really a game changer for this industry, and we're excited to be telling you some more about it today. Before we get started, I would like to introduce our presenters. With us today is David Blewett. He is our Vice President of Cloud Compliance here at USDM. David is an accomplished regulatory and IS compliance professional with a lot of hands-on leadership experience in the pharmaceutical, medical device, and biotech industries, specifically in the fields of computer system validation, risk management, and compliance roadmap development. David and his team here at USDM are helping companies move from on-premise solutions to the cloud, and he's an expert in ensuring compliance with these applications. He's also been involved in many of our recent DocuSign validation projects that we'll be discussing today. Next we have Jennifer Royer, who is the Senior Product Marketing Manager with DocuSign. Jennifer is also a healthcare and life science expert, managing product marketing and leading DocuSign in product launches, partnerships, conferences, and the go-to-market strategy for the life science business. Jennifer has been an integral part of the development of the life science solution at DocuSign with USDM. Prior to DocuSign, she worked with early-stage tech startups and spent several years advising Fortune 500 companies on their growth and marketing strategies, while also supporting drug launches, global sales enablement. She's been working with many leading global pharmaceutical companies in the past few years. And last but certainly not least, we have a customer of ours today, Steve Livingston, who is the Program Manager for Regulatory Affairs and Quality Assurance at Varian Medical Systems. Steve has over 20 years of experience in IT, including management roles in support, networking, security, IT procurement, and quality, and over 6 years in compliance and regulatory affairs. Steve has spent the last 4 years as the process owner at Varian for process software validation. I'm going to take just a second to go through the logistics for our webinar. We're going to try to keep it today to about 30 minutes. We will be answering questions at the end, but as we go through the presentation, if you have questions, feel free to enter them over on the left-hand corner of the screen in the chat area, and we'll be addressing those at the end. We will have a recording of the webinar. Will be available on our website later today, so if you have folks that weren't able to join and would like to share the information, feel free to do that. We'll also be continuing our discussions on our webinar and social media pages. Quick introduction to USDM Life Sciences, if this is your first USDM webinar. We work exclusively in the life science and healthcare industries. We are a global leader in providing IT, quality, and regulatory solutions to this space. And for the past few years, we've been helping companies, many of which may be on the line today, move from on-premise solutions to cloud-based technologies, with an emphasis really on ensuring that FDA and other global regulations, including 21 CFR Part 11, can be met with cloud applications like DocuSign. Today you will be hearing specifically about our cloud practice, but I do want to emphasize that we've got specialized teams in all of those areas where you need to be thinking about compliance, whether it be clinical, laboratory, ERP, content management, complaint management, and we've got some really fantastic subject matter experts on important regulations, not just 21 CFR, but UDI, serialization, and the recent DSCSA regulation. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Jennifer to do the introduction to DocuSign.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Delighted to be with you all today. So I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about the DocuSign DPM solution, but I'd like most of this discussion to actually then focus to our customer, Steve, because I think those are the best stories. But to begin, a little overview about DocuSign. We are a global company, much like this industry, with operations in almost every country and documents that have been DocuSigned in nearly every country around the world. We've been around for over a decade, and we are exclusively focused on the space that we like to call digital transaction management. And as I go through this overview, you'll learn a little bit more about what that is. But essentially, you can think of it as an engine that's fueling productivity and collaboration in your business, in that anything that you used to be doing with paper manual processes, we're helping you go fully digital in that process. And we're seeing incredible growth and opportunity in this space. As you might imagine, paper is a thing of the past, increasingly so. And so we're adding about 40,000 new users a day. We have over 100,000 customers. And specifically in life sciences, we are honored to count a lot of leading innovative companies in our stable of life science customers. So we have 14 of the top 15 global pharmaceuticals, 12 of the top 15 med device, and 9 of the top 10 clinical research organizations. So very exciting time for us and a lot of opportunity out there. So let's talk a little bit about the partnership we have with USDM. You've heard a high-level overview of DocuSign and USDM. So what are we doing here together? Well, a little over a year ago, we had a webinar where we were announcing our partnership, and we were sort of in the infancy. But essentially, you can think of it as DocuSign is providing the technology, and USDM is doing a lot of the validation work. As you know, with Part 11, in these regulated use cases, you need to have that validation. And so there's a lot of detail here. We're happy to go into more of the technical specifics with you, but we, in our solution for Part 11, have designed capabilities where you have not only the signature, but also the reason for signing, the date and time, all of these things that are required by the regulation. And I mentioned we had a webinar around this time last year. We've made great strides since that time. So we've had 10 customers that have validated with USDM and a wide range of use cases. SOPs are a very popular one, training documentation, and then a lot of use cases in quality and compliance. So certainly a range of possibilities. Clinical operations and quality are big ones, as you know, for Part 11 in general. And we're just seeing a lot of growth across the board. And then we've got some of our marquee customers in the top 10 there that we've validated. And just to shed a little more light on what's possible with DocuSign, we talked a lot about use cases, and here we're really focused in the top right quadrant, if you will, in terms of what we're doing with USDM. But when you think about digital adoption across the enterprise, it truly is an enterprise-wide solution, and you may have different needs in different places. So if you have something like an HR form or procurement, purchase orders, that tends to be more of the non-regulated electronic signature use cases. If you're in certain countries, then digital signatures may become more important. And we have a lot of great partnerships. Open Trust is one of them that's big in France. We have our own proprietary digital signature solution. And then in the regulated space, we have an integration with Safe Biopharma. And recently, DocuSign announced the acquisition of ARX and the CoSign technology, which is another digital signature solution. So really, this is just meant to illustrate the range of possibilities across the board with use cases in these various areas, as well as the e-sig versus d-sig component. So I spoke a little bit earlier about the problem we're trying to solve, and it's essentially this. You see the little picture of paper in the middle there. And so what this is meant to show is that you likely have invested in technology across your enterprise, anything from the alphabet soup of ERP, CRM, and so forth. And you've got a lot of these systems in place, but what we've found in our customer base is that oftentimes when it comes to that final moment in the transaction when you need to get that complete, you need to get something signed, it reverts to paper. And printing and scanning and faxing, and it's painful, it's time-consuming, and it's expensive. Especially when you think about what that means for a global business, which likely are most of your businesses. That's just taking extra cost and time that could otherwise be helping you bring drugs and devices to market sooner. So it's a real problem. And where we come in is digitizing that process. So what used to be done in paper is now fully digital, and we're here to help you with that solution, partner with you in all of these different places across your business. And I've mentioned use cases a few times, so just wanted to give a few more concrete examples in some of these different areas. As I mentioned, it spans everything from the non-regulated internal use cases to things like e-clinical portals, SOPs, so a lot here for the regulatory space in clinical collaboration and quality management. And again, that's really where we're more focused today, and of course where Part 11 becomes very relevant. So really a range of options here, both in the clinical trial process and then a lot of the quality and audits that happen both there and afterwards when you go into manufacturing, production, post-marketing, and so on. And what we've highlighted here as well under each of these areas is some of the partners in our ecosystem. So you've invested in a lot of these systems. Maybe you're using SharePoint or SAP or Salesforce. Great news for you is that for many of these solutions, we either have out-of-the-box integrations, or if not, we do a lot of custom work, custom integrations. We have robust APIs. So it's not that you need to rip out any of the systems you have in place. Those can stay. DocuSign can work with basically anything you have. We play nice with everyone would be the message there. And then before I actually show you the demo here, just wanted to provide some of the statistics. I talk about saving time and money. Well, in life sciences, we're seeing $38 per document savings. It's actually about 1.5 times the average for our company, and reducing cycle time by 98%, or an average of 3 weeks. There was a study a while back that said blockbuster drugs were grossing around $7.5 million a day. Of course, we all aspire to develop blockbuster drugs. And what that equates to is about $150 million in revenue if you're shaving 3 weeks off of whatever the business process may be that you're using DocuSign for, just using that 21-day metric. So that's the overview I wanted to get through, and then we find that seeing is believing here. So I just wanted to go through a quick demo here to actually show you the technology. So let me share my screen. Oh, and here we go. So I'm actually going to show this out of a demo portal that we have. So you can imagine that you're in a portal of your own, perhaps, to manage clinical trials and collaboration. So I'll demo a use case around investigator onboarding. So what I'm showing here is that I can enter all this information that I want to populate this investigator form with from this portal. So I'll go through a few screens. For purposes of the demo, it's pre-populated. So I'm just going to click through. And this is another means of authentication. I can just add a code that I want this person to use, the doctor, when she completes the onboarding. So I'll submit that. And then what will happen is the form's going out. So now I am assuming the identity of Dr. Kahina Ko, And you can see I'm in her email here. I have a document to review and sign. Now here's where the regulation kicks in. Normally to sign a document, you don't have to go through this process of entering your credentials, but in this case I do. And this is one of the requirements of Part 11. I've got that access code that I entered in the portal. So now I'm going to go ahead and complete the document. So all of this form information, by the way, that you saw in the portal is pre-populated here, which is pretty cool. She needs to attach her CV. Whoop. Do that. And now this is the actual signing experience. So again, normally when you sign something in DocuSign, you don't have to go through this extra step of authenticating before you sign, but we have to comply with the regulation. So the technology is designed for life sciences companies in this manner. I'm going to attach her CV. That's pretty cool. I can just put the attachment right in there. And what I wanted to actually zoom in and show you, I think I went past it now. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Is the signature itself. So you have not only the digital rendering of the signature, but also the signing time, name, and reason, which is a requirement of Part 11. So this is not what your plain vanilla DocuSign looks like. So I'm going to confirm signing. There. Come on. And my screen might be locked. This is why demos are fun. Okay, there we go. So it actually takes me back into the DocuSign console. This is the doctor's console, and you can see any documents here that were sent, or you can just pull it up here. And now if I go back into the portal and go to view the status, I'll be able to see, hey, this document was completed, great, and there are a variety of other things that you can view. So if I click on history, for example, you can actually see, and this is something you don't get with paper, right? The IP address, the time it was sent, what happened. There's a lot of detail in here, but I'll leave it at that. But the richness of this audit trail and the documentation that you get digitally is pretty impressive. So I will now go back into the PowerPoint. Let me try and do that. Okay, perfect. So there's the demo. And without further ado, I would like to hand it off to Steve Livingston at Varian, who will share his story of digital innovation and adoption. Steve, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, I'll start with a bit about Varian Medical Systems. We're the world's leading manufacturer of medical devices and software for treating cancer and other medical conditions with radiotherapy, radiosurgery, proton therapy, and brachytherapy. We're also a supplier of X-ray imaging components used for medical and scientific applications, as well as for cargo screening and industrial inspection. We have about 6,800 employees worldwide, and we do about $3 billion in revenues each year. One business need within Varian was product acceptance by customers. Our products are big and take months of site preparation and installation, as well as testing and training before the customer accepts it. The business group saw a great opportunity for streamlining the process of ensuring quick recognition that the product has been accepted by the customer. Not only did this simplify the workload of the servicing group, it also sped the financial recognition of the product delivery. They called it e-acceptance. So for 2 or 3 years ago, we had a preliminary meeting with DocuSign, the Varian business work groups, and regulatory. We were evaluating whether DocuSign had the potential to meet the business and regulatory requirements for this e-acceptance project. The meeting went well, but it was only an hour or two. So it wasn't very detailed, but it did cover the basics. The potential was there for solving both the business problem for meeting compliance requirements, and more specifics would need to be considered later. So you just thought, okay, we'll address this when we're ready to make a decision. Approximately 1 year later, the business and IT signed a contract with DocuSign. This was a complete surprise to regulatory. We hadn't been involved. We hadn't been notified at all. We had no idea it was coming. So now, to be fair, e-acceptance wasn't the only reason IT decided to sign up and purchase DocuSign. They really had some other applications as well. Some are the SEC filings, both 10Ks and 10Qs. We had, for sales administration, we had some business partnering agreements, and for procurement, there were contracts and invoices that would be signed. So we had multiple uses for it, but the regulatory one for e-acceptance was particularly problematic, and we had some concerns. As with all cloud solutions, we are concerned with data security. Will our data be safe and remain so? Data integrity, will our records be there when we need them? And then Part 11, which adds some very specifics to the mix for both e-records and e-signatures. And so we have to consider this for all the cloud providers that we use. And right now, Varian has been pushing to a lot of cloud service providers. So it's something that we're not just didn't have to just address with DocuSign, but for other providers as well. We had recently established a procedure for all software and IT services suppliers to qualify them according to 82050 purchasing controls. So from a regulatory perspective, we knew what our first steps needed to be. And with this, we performed a service assessment. That's where we determined what service we're getting from the service provider, what we're expecting, and how they provide it. So it's really what kind of structure they're using internally. Will they be able to do Part 11 at all? What kind of security do they have? It's really to get a full understanding of that service. This takes about an hour, and it's done over a conference call, so it's not a big deal to do a service assessment. We next performed a process assessment at DocuSign, where we actually traveled up to Seattle and met with their team there. And this is a more extensive assessment of their internal organizational structure for both developing and supporting their services. We don't call it an audit because we don't want to kind of mistake it as an audit. We really like to stay with the term assessment. The regulation itself says you have to evaluate suppliers. It doesn't say you have to audit them. So we try to keep that differentiation pretty clear. But what this process assessment does is look at their processes as well as Part 11 requirements. And it gives us a chance to look and determine what kind of risk that we're going to have if using their service, what kinds of things that we're going to have to validate on our own if they don't do validation. In this case, they don't validate themselves. So what do we have to do to validate the application? And then what kinds of things are we going to have to do when new releases come out in order to make sure that our validation remains current? And so that's what the assessment's about. We come away from it understanding how their processes work and then how we're going to work and mitigate any risks that we determine are there. Now, coming out of this assessment, we had a couple of concerns with Part 11, compliance. And this really goes back to that, thinking that DocuSign wasn't initially designed for life sciences companies and to meet international regulations for compliance. So but once they decided to get into this space, they really did jump in. They were working with USDM. They were working with us to kind of understand what our concerns were and then how they could address it or how their product addressed it. And what was really helpful was that coordinated development between USDM and DocuSign. I think that partnering really did accelerate how fast DocuSign was able to allay our fears for Part 11 compliance. Now, once the regulatory issues were resolved and we got the application on board, we rolled it out, we then ran into a little bit of a problem. We had a couple of stumbling blocks of our own. One of those was that the legality of e-signatures is not universal. It's not everywhere that people consider it legal. So some countries didn't follow it. And for us, granted, they were smaller companies. They're not our most important customer regions. So it was a nuisance. It wasn't really a showstopper. But we ran into a bigger problem, which was cultural. And there was one aspect of the transference process that we didn't anticipate. In some regions, customers viewed the transaction of the signing off of our system, of the delivery of our system to them, to their hospital, to their clinic or health center, whatever it is. They kind of thought of it more as a formal celebratory event and major transition for their health center. So they liked the formality of signing the documents and us handing the document and having them sign. So they weren't totally receptive to e-signing for the document. So that was one change management issue that we failed to consider. Overall, the e-acceptance rollout slowed a bit outside the U.S., but within the U.S. it was well received and it's providing the major benefits we thought it would. One, the process is more streamlined, and two, the integration to revenue recognition is very timely. It really did speed it up because the e-signature triggers stuff in SAP, which automatically goes into financial recognition. So that's really good. We do have within the company, what kind of sparked a lot of this was we do have a goal within Varian IT to move to paperless transactions, to try to get more and more, get outside of sending paper back and forth. Now, within the company, we already have a homegrown e-signing solution for internal documents and signatures. And the numbers that Jennifer shared earlier definitely apply within Varian. We see tremendous cost savings and time savings by having that tool. And the amount of time and frustration involved with signing the documents manually was, back in the old days, was also compounded with the regulatory requirements. You guys know that we have to sign documents in sequence, and you can't be doing something until the previous document was signed. When we had to route that around manually, it was just a nightmare to try to get all the documents signed in the right succession or the right order as we're supposed to in order to be compliant with our procedures and with regulations. So our own e-signing tool internally definitely was a big boon. This one, now that we're starting to do it externally, is going to have the same effect in those areas with compliance. Now, in the long run, it does make sense that we'll probably fully evolve to all DocuSign solutions. So it's not, the homegrown solution is just so well entrenched. It's really, as we start to build up more expertise and experience with DocuSign, you can start to see more and more things even internally starting to move towards that solution. So going forward, e-signatures are new in some places across the globe, and so we do have to be careful, make sure that we know what their requirements are. Particularly, some countries are starting to roll out their own FDA types of organization, China being an example of that, Brazil. They're coming up with their own regulations, so now we have to be more attentive to what those compliance requirements are. The biggest hurdle we have, though, is with single sign-on. DocuSign doesn't just support it yet, and that's a big yet. This summer, there's supposed to be a pilot release for a solution with SSO, and Varian IT is very anxious about this. I mean, that's one of their big drawbacks, because we really would like to make it more seamless within our company. And again, that would help to also make it easier for our own internal e-signing and using DocuSign for that purpose. Another area that is really the offline signing, for lack of a better term. Getting external users to sign up for a DocuSign account, it's an issue, but it's not a big one. And it's not really big in terms of what the effort that they have to make to do it. But when you're trying to get customers to sign up so that they can e-sign a document, there's a little bit of discomfort in that they have to do something extra, and you're really counting on them in order for you to get your own document signed. But we're working through that, and like I said, it isn't a big deal when you do sign up for a DocuSign account. Resources. Of course, we didn't have anybody in-house that was really trained in DocuSign. that was an expert. But just recently in March, we did hire a DocuSign resource that's dedicated to that purpose, and they'll be doing support as well as designing workflow development or envelope development within DocuSign. And that will definitely will reflect in more business processes being enabled by DocuSign. That's a big step you need to take. And then the last area for us going ahead is really awareness and acceptance. IT has launched a promotional campaign within Varian and getting the word out about DocuSign and trying to engage the business on how can they use DocuSign, how can they see themselves using DocuSign, where does this need to apply, what kinds of processes would this help with. And that's really important. The other side is because they now have this resource, they now can also start to create some templates and get some standard templates out there, some workflows, so it makes it easier for the end users to know how they can apply it. So what were our key learnings? Big one was the signing differences, really all three of these areas here, legality, cultural, and compliance, that you need to be aware of those things and not just think it's one size fits all. Use cases. We were not thorough enough in defining our use cases. I mean, they had it at a high level, but they didn't go in depth on how it would be used. And then the other thing we didn't do is we didn't really walk it through in the various regions where we're planning to deploy the solution and see how they would accept it. And so we've come away to know that we should have caught this ahead of time. We should have walked through those use cases in those different regions with different representatives, and we would have found out that some of those expectations were not going to be met, and we'd had a better plan. Setting up the correct expectations. Implementing in the cloud doesn't just mean easy. It is a lot easier. Don't get me wrong, but it is a tremendous shortcut to rolling out an application or service. It's cheaper, it's faster, it's more effective and efficient. However, we still need to do our internal homework, and that's with the use cases, process review, and compliance. You really got to look at all those aspects and how they apply to any cloud solution. And most of the companies are like DocuSign. I think they have a white paper on how they comply with Part 11. Very, very helpful to go through that kind of stuff and really look it over and see if it measures up to what your interpretation is and how you want to proceed. And like I said, the cloud makes it so much easier. It really is something very useful for us to start to move to. And then lastly, as with all projects, for each business process, you really need to make sure you have good workflow definition, what's in scope, develop your workflow integrated with the cloud service, and that you really understand all those touch points. Plan for your change management. What is going to change in your company? Identify the obstacles to that change, address them ahead of time. And lots of communication. Get the word out early and often. Receive feedback and be sure to listen to that feedback on why people are hesitant or what their concerns are. And then last, training. And don't do the training too early. That's one thing we realize sometimes we train because we're trying to get people to know how to set up the application, but then when it comes time to use it, it's been a few months before, and they've kind of forgotten that training. So, and good job aids are also important to kind of put out there for the people to use the tools. And so that's been our experience, and now I'll turn it over. David will take over from here.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve. So I just wanted to go through a couple of quick poll questions while we go into the next piece, which is how to validate DocuSign. The first of which is a question of, do you have a company initiative right now or center of excellence around digitization or e-signatures? If you could just check one of those boxes, and you'll see a live bar chart that will come up as you're doing that while we're doing it. So I'll give you 30 seconds to quickly just click on those. All right, so we can see the results there. There's like a number of people do have the initiative already. There's Some people have the e-signature DocuSign initiative as well. Some people are not sure and moving on into them very soon. So that's great. We do have one more question. Again, we'll be following up on these questions with everybody as well. And the next question, this is the second of our two questions. How is your organization planning to adopt e-signatures and digital transaction management technology right now? So again, if you can just click one of those that applies, and we'll see that coming up. So there you can see a number of you are already using it, but you're planning to expand. Some are considering it, haven't yet adopted it. Some people out there still using pen and paper, and then there's a number they're not sure. So it looks like there's some definitely consideration out there for using it, and hopefully this session will aid you in doing that. So just real quickly, I want to go through the next pieces, which is validating DocuSign and how you overcome those challenges being as a cloud system and the cloud system compliance challenges. So first of all, I'd like to say the establishment of a robust and a meaningful and useful SLA is very important. DocuSign has all the processes in place, the people, technology in place already, and you should be looking to see from your suppliers, fully documented infrastructure qualification, system administration and backup recovery processes, system redundancies, security policies and encryption policies, as well as communications and schedules. So all of this, enables you to leverage DocuSign's established documentation they already have when you're implementing GXP functionality for your own system. So that's critical when you're looking at selecting that provider. And like I say, DocuSign has that already. The other thing is performing annual audits. Regulations specify you need to perform audits on your vendors in certain cases, and DocuSign's one of those. So you need to do one of those on an annual basis. And of course, how do you qualify and validate a system that's not on-premise? And again, that goes back to leveraging a lot of the stuff that processes have been established already in the DocuSign arena. So that's why we need to select those suppliers very carefully. So what about validation and the FDA? The FDA have actually themselves embracing the cloud. They're using the cloud now and leveraging it for their own big data initiatives. They have enormous storage and analysis needs, and they're upgrading their own technology platforms to that end. So it's been adopted, by the regulatory bodies as well. They're understanding the need for it. And of course, Salesforce.com, DocuSign has been validated a number of times and qualified to show Part 11 compliance. And the top pharma and medical device companies are using it and starting to use it to enable the use cases that was Jennifer went through earlier on. So it really does aid in getting that system bolted into your other processes very easily. So qualifying the core platform, that's very important. You need to establish your robust SLA, like we talked about earlier on, with the vendor audits as well, backing that up. But then the core platform that comes across, it's a standard platform that everyone gets as a cloud system, and then you can configure it, workflows and templates in there to meet your own system needs and integrations to systems. So with DocuSign, the core configuration of baseline, like I say, is very it's the same for everyone. Each release is qualified and validated. You establish a validation plan. It refers to the use of DocuSign's own change control and administration and maintenance SOPs. The system requirements for the release are established. You baseline the configuration with your IQ and your OQ, and then the release notes are delivered for each release. So that's very critical once you have that in place. And going back to the SLA, you've got everything in place. You can then qualify that core. A little bit more kind of graphical explanation of that. You can see, this diagram gives you a clear understanding that the efforts that DocuSign undertakes to produce those release notes and all the testing that's done. USDM does a lot of testing and verifies that core platform for you, and then you can bolt on your own pieces to it and add those pieces to it. So that's the establishment of that core DocuSign platform. And then, of course, the following part, which is just as critical, if not more critical, the customer-specific piece. So your own DocuSign configuration and workflows that you want to use to meet your own business needs. So you'll have a validation plan that would probably cover the core and your specific configurations and your workflows. You'll do that configuration as part of your own customer validation package. You perform IQ, OQ, PQ on those pieces as well as the core, and then once you've finished with that, you do all the traceability, of course, and all the requirements documentation. You have your validation summary report, and you release your functionality. So that's how you get from a non-validated validated state. But of course, you have to maintain that validation once you're there. So how do you do that? This is key, obviously, for using DocuSign for GXP functionality. So due to its nature, the cloud is updated on a regular basis. And DocuSign updates 4 times a year, and they issue release notes ahead of time. They give you 60 days notice ahead of time what the releases are going to be. They're always issued ahead to allow customers to analyze what they are, produce any change control steps they need, and as well as any PQ scripts or OQ scripts they need to do, as well as regression tests for potentially affected areas. It's important to note that the vast majority, over 99% of any of the patches aren't going to affect any specific customer configurations. Most of the time they're going to be enhancements or additions of functionality or around the OS or the security level. So nothing you have done will be affected in the absolute vast majority of everything. And of course, DocuSign themselves are going to be doing hundreds of thousands of tests on lines of code and things like that that they do on every single release to make sure nothing's affected. So they really do reduce that risk to as low as really possible in every way. So a quick overview of the cost-saving strategy that we employ at USDM. We have validation accelerators that we've been using for over 10 years now. And these accelerators, they're application specific. So we have one for DocuSign. Of course, we have others for other cloud systems and non-cloud systems. And they have that best practice framework all based around GAMP5, how to validate systems in GXP, the GXP arena. We help you to meet the regulations that you have. So the way we do that, we have pre-populated and pre-packaged documentation sets. So we'll have a vendor audit, we have a validation plan, system requirement specifications, risk assessments, system administration and maintenance SOPs, all of the AQ, OQ, PQ scripts, traceability matrix, all of those 9 squares you see on the right-hand side. They're all about 85–90% already done for the core platform, and that speeds up the time to get the system implemented and validated hugely. And of course, they're all GAMP5 based, it's all risk based. And then the maintenance piece, as part of our services, we provide for each of the releases that DocuSign comes out with. We do a risk assessment on that, and we either provide brand new scripts for the new functionality if it's something that affects GXP Arena, or we provide a report that says there's no inherent risk from any of the changes that DocuSign have done. And we also recommend any regression tests you need to do. So that part maintains your system and your validation in a compliant state throughout the year. Okay, so now I'll quickly hand back to Kim, and she'll go through any questions we may have real quick.
Wonderful. Thank you all very much. I want to thank you for staying on the line. We've gone over our time, but let's take a couple of minutes if you can join us for a few more minutes for us to go through some of the questions. So the first one we have is, can you please explain the difference between an electronic signature and a digital signature? Jennifer, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So I realize this could come up anytime we show a chart with both of them in there. At a very high level, you can think of it as analogous to having a credit card, plain vanilla credit card, to one with a chip in it. And what I mean by that is an electronic signature in its simplest form is really about the intent to sign and agree to something and doing that electronically with your mark, which is why you can actually have a font as your signature or your actual signature rendered digitally. So in its basic form, electronic signature is just that. It's the intent and agreement in what we call the signing ceremony. Now with DocuSign, electronic signature is much more in that we have a robust set of security controls, audit trail, certificate of completion, et cetera, around that, so that we're ensuring the identity of each signer and making that trail fully traceable and tamper-proof, so that you have the highest security specifications around that. We're actually one of the only vendors that are ISO 27001 certified. Now, with a digital signature, I referenced earlier that oftentimes this is something like the credit cards with the chips in them that come up more in ex-US countries. So in Europe, in South America is where we're seeing a lot more of this usage. And so essentially this is just another means of authenticating the signer, because your identity is tied to some standards-based technology. It could be the identity standards of an entity like Safe Biopharma. It could be a digital kind of ID card that you carry around in some of these other countries. So it really depends, but it's just another layer of authenticating your identity. So that's, at a very high level, that's the difference.
Okay, another question. I believe you indicated that an access code is required. We did not use an access code. Is it definitely required to be compliant? I don't know that we.
So I'll take that one. It's probably because of what I flashed in the demo. I showed the use of an access code in that portal. And so I was just being fancy. It's not required. It is one of the ways that you can layer on additional authentication standards. And so it's one of the many extra kind of identity proofing services that we offer. So we have SMS, phone-based, knowledge-based authentication. Many of these you're probably familiar with when you log into your credit card account or forget your password. These sorts of things will crop up so that you have more than one way of confirming that you are who you say you are. And so, like I said, not required. We've found across the board that it tends to be more conservative industries and customers who want an additional layer or layers may choose to adopt something like that. So a lot of big financial services institutions, for instance, will invest in, and it may not necessarily be access code, it may be KBI or some other means. But we're happy to talk to you about what those offerings are and kind of give you that menu if you're interested.
Great. Let's see, the next one. Does DocuSign work with electronic content management systems like LiveLink? In other words, the ECM is used for collaborative reviews. DocuSign is used as the e-signature piece. Okay,
since that said DocuSign in, I will take that one also. So the short answer, and I'm not as familiar with LiveLink in particular, but short answer is yes. So we have a very flexible technology in that we have robust APIs that can basically plug into whatever you have already. And so if we don't have a pre-built integration, which tends to be the case for some of the larger partners like Microsoft and Salesforce, even Box and SAP, if we don't have something out of the box, then we can work with you and your teams to embed the DocuSign engine, if you will, and that electronic signing technology into other workflows and systems that you have.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Let's see. How long does it take to set up DocuSign, and what kind of training do you provide for new DocuSign customers?
So it depends on what the use cases are. You could be up and running in literally minutes. If you're doing something a little more complicated, it can be maybe a few months working with our team. So if you're doing something like signing contracts or HR forms more in the unregulated arena, we've actually had customers come to us at the end of the quarter trying to get their contracts completed. They sign up for a trial account, and it's like whim, bam, boom, they're done. So it can be that straightforward. If you're doing something like an implementation, like the example I was just speaking to, that does require a longer time horizon, simply because we've got to actually crack open the nuts and bolts of the technology and have DocuSign fit into those systems. So if we don't have a pre-built solution, then there will be a longer roadmap engaging our services organization and the technical folks with your teams. And then I think maybe part of the question was around training. So we do offer pretty robust services, everything from technical implementation to basic training, if you will. We have courses through DocuSign University, but also on-site consultants who can come out and work with you on use case implementation and broader professional services. So,
okay.
Again, it depends.
David,
Depends.
Sorry, David, could you maybe just speak to the validation piece real quickly? How long does that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with the simple use cases of the quality assurance groups using it for signing processes and SOPs and documents, we typically do projects in around the 4 to 5 week time frame, including all the validation, the setup, the configurations, things like that, and the final sign-offs and validation reports, IQing the QA environments, and then IQing the production environment and signing that off. So that's about a 4 to 5 week implementation for simple use cases, and that's the majority of customers will use those to begin with, and then move into using more complex ones and doing workflows and so on.
Great. Well, I know we're getting close to the top of the hour now, and Jennifer, I know, needed to bow out to make another meeting. Let's see if we can maybe take a couple of additional questions here. Do you have any platforms for subject consenting via DocuSign?
So maybe I'm not interpreting this correctly.
That could be like
it sounds like a use case.
Consent?
I mean, yeah, I'm thinking of patient consent. So this, again, is my interpretation of the question. But yes, that is a use case that is pretty widely used. In healthcare systems also, we're finding a lot of e-consent. So the Children's Hospital of LA has actually adopted DocuSign, integrated with their EMR system for surgical consents. But if I think of the context of some life science businesses for like clinical trial consenting, then yes, we also work in those areas.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. We do have some other questions, but I do want to be respectful of people's time. We really do appreciate you joining us today. The other questions that we did not get to, we will follow up with you personally to make sure that they get addressed. In the meantime, for any of you that want to, again, share the webinar, it will be on our website. Please check out our Facebook page, LinkedIn. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you.